Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, expert moderators, panelists, and solutions sponsors for participating in this year's Insight Jam Live. This has been a big year with the launch of the InsightJam.com community site and the amazing growth of the Insight Jam YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 subscribers. Much of this success is tied directly to the video events, podcasts, and panel discussions we have been producing, and none of that would be possible without the thoughtful participation of the many IT professionals who are generously sharing their expert insights for this latest jam. We are building Insight Jam to be a place to celebrate enterprise technology with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome to the 6th annual Insight Jam Strategies for AI Impact 4 Days of Thought Leadership. My name is Jonathan Paul. I'm the Director of Multimedia and Events here at Solutions Review. And the theme for this, our final day of the Jam, has been the human edge. And I'm especially excited to welcome in our next panel as we discuss women, AI, and the future of work, strategies for executive growth. Of course, an all-female panel for that occasion. Excited to have you all here. Appreciate your time in advance. Looking forward to this discussion. Kyler, welcome back, first and foremost. Excited to have you moderate. Let's get into some introductions, 30 seconds or less. Tell the audience a bit about yourself and your work history.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm Kyler Cheatham, Chief Performance Officer at The Confluential. We focus in technology integration and speed to value when it comes to utilizing AI specifically within enterprise applications. I'm also an ERP women executive coach. So I'm really excited to have the conversation about how we get more women in our industry and how that is shaping our work within the AI field.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And next up, let's go over to Anne.
Thanks for having me here today. I'm Ann Schlemmer. I am the CEO of Percona. We are an open source database company. So as we all know, data is driving AI. So topic near and dear. And I'm excited to be on the panel with all these other fellow panelists today.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anna, over to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. My name is Anupama Santosh. I also go by Anna. I'm a global AI strategist for Fortune 500 companies as well as SMEs. I'm also the CEO of Craft AI, where we deliver thought leadership and expertise on AI and strategy.
So thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Maggie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Maggie Urmenzi. I'm the VP of Curriculum at DataCamp. We are an edtech learning provider. We create data and AI education for both B2B and B2C audiences worldwide.
Okay, thank you very much. And over to Nejo.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be part of this panel today. Nejo Ifield, Vice President of Business Development at Covenant Technologies. We are the people part of people, process, and technology as you think of information technology and cybersecurity programs. I'm also the president of B-Sides NOLA here in New Orleans, which is a local cybersecurity conference.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Dr. Sue, welcome.
Yes, thank you. My name is Dr. Suprabha Tripathi. I'm been in data, AI, technology, and transformation, working for various multinational companies as a senior executive for IBM and Accenture and NTT Data for many, many years. And just delighted to be here with the other panelists. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Delighted to have you back on. Appreciate it. Kyler, I'll let you start things off with our opening remarks and first question. I'll step out of the way and I'll catch up with all of you at the end of the show for some self-promo.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you being here. I think this is a really important conversation for us to have, and some representation of how we bring women specifically in the AI new frontier. So let's kind of dive into leadership opportunities specifically. So for this question, I'd love you to kind of give your insight into trends in the marketplace on how AI is really shaping leadership roles for women and what opportunity that might present. You can either use your own experience or kind of talk about what you're seeing in the marketplace. But Anne, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I think that in the space now, we know that in STEM in general, women and minority groups or marginalized groups are underrepresented. So as I'm looking at it, it's an opportunity for us to really dive in, be using the technology, and also thinking about beyond the technology in areas of either compliance, risk management. Those sort of items are opportunities for us really to shine and step in even further. So those are different areas that I'm seeing right now as a trend.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much in AI in that field that showcases opportunity, compliance, procurement, all kinds of different areas in which AI is really touching. So amazing point. And Anna, you're a CEO of an AI-based company, which is just amazing. Can you kind of tell us your experience on that leadership path?
Sure. So I've been in the AI ML space for about 10 years now, and often I was the only woman in many of the engineering teams I was in. So I personally believe, having been in a lot of women in STEM groups and women in tech groups, AI in particular lowers the barrier of entry, because I've worked in so many programs and events catered to getting more women into tech. And I think with a natural language interface, AI sort of like lowers that barrier, and opens up a lot of opportunities for women to get more into the tech space, not just AI, but like any sort of like tech endeavor, especially since what I've been observing in my role as a mentor to many early professionals is that it is taking away the barrier of coding, because through platforms like ChatGPT or Claude, you can prompt how to code or how to program any sort of application. So what I'm seeing is that a lot more people, especially marginalized communities, are coming into the field of tech through AI in particular.
Absolutely. So cool. That generative AI is really kind of bringing up that business technologist. And I'm sure, Dr. Sue, you've seen something similar. Would love to hear your thoughts on kind of the executive role of AI in leadership.
So I find it very interesting. I think, you literally made me think. Last year, I live in Colorado, and I was at this session, an all-day session, where there were students, young men and women. And if I recall correctly, out of all the students, there were only 2 women in there, 2 young females in AI. And the rest were all young boys, young men. And that made me pause actually quite a bit on the pipeline that we are creating in this country, and where we are with STEM, and where we are in creating this future leadership. So I'm frankly very delighted to see someone like Anna and others here on this panel. I think there's a huge dichotomy between our wish of what we would like to see versus the reality of what we are seeing, right? I think in this new era, I am seeing a lot of new positions both in federal, state, as well as in the commercial sector, at least in the US, and even in EMEA, for roles such as Chief Data Officer, Chief Data Analytics Officer, Chief AI Officers. What I'm not seeing, however, is that those roles are necessarily filled in by women. And I'm fine with that, in the sense that they should be filled by merit. I don't want it to be filled by women because of gender. I want it to be filled by merit. But I think there are plenty of women, frankly, who are, by sheer dint, by their own, have a lot of merit, right? And I don't want to, say what we already know, is that sometimes some of us are overlooked. And I think we have reached that phase where we ourselves have recognized that, and we've got a lot of support both from men and women in the workplace, where hopefully we are not just a token representation, because we don't want to be a token representation. We want to be recognized, and we have earned the seat at that table. But unfortunately, I do think that instead of getting a full seat, we are probably at a quarter seat or a half a seat, right? We may have not even added an additional seat. And so we're still jostling. That is my honest view. Now, does that mean that we'd stop jostling? Absolutely not. I think my concern, frankly, from an executive level, is less about that and more about where our future lies. And I think the future is what worries me. The future is the pipeline. The future is whether there is deep interest in the areas of STEM, forget AI for a minute, is in the area of data, to Anne's point, because without data, you're really not going to have good AI. And in this buzzword of AI, I am a little uneasy to actually talk about AI without understanding the foundations and the fundamentals of what data is. And so we're kind of glossing over, we are using words like executive leadership, AI, what AI can do, what AI is going to replace. And we're not talking about the anchor and the foundations upon which AI is going to be built, and where those resources are going to come about, and where we are going to create those opportunities, where we're going to meld and frankly address some of these disparities, both from a gender point of view, as well as not just gender disparities, but other disparities as well, and then address the issue of AI building, and then build leadership, because not everybody needs to be a leader. Not everybody has that innate quality of being a leader. You can be an innovator, you can be a solution reviewer, you can be in compliance, you can be an auditor. There's so many different roles, both in data as well as in AI, the multiple roles. You don't need to be technical. You can be in pre-sales, you can be in sales, multiple avenues for people to be engaged in this industry. But I am very, very, I wouldn't say skeptical. I wouldn't even say worried. I think just bringing it home to say, what do we want to build? What is the future, and who are we competing with? Because the world is shrinking, and we have to be very competitive and very on edge. And so I don't know how many of those conversations we are having in the workplace. I sure hope that we are, but that's where I'm going to leave it.
Right. Yes, certainly. Lots of defining to do as an industry, as a society, no doubt on that. So going to you, Nejo, what's your thoughts on kind of this journey of what AI is looking like as far as leadership? I think I posted a stat on LinkedIn and tagged you guys on it, but we're only seeing, according to the 2023 Women in the Workplace from McKinsey and Company, about 8 to 9% of women being in kind of those technical leadership roles, head of IT, CTO, CIO. Kind of what is your take on that trend in the industry?
So I'd like to think that, having grown up in IT and cybersecurity, that maybe there's a number of us that have I don't think the path will ever be paved, but maybe it's a little less bumpy for those that are coming up in other technical areas of the industry. And we take a look at IT, and the percentage of women is still low. Cyber, I think we're in the 20s, and you look at industrial cyber, and it's probably 8 or 10%. But it's forums like this, having this panel, having these discussions about what does that look like? How are we creating spaces for women? And you mentioned risk. So we're seeing a lot more roles for risk in AI. Definitely leadership roles as chief risk officers. Dr. Sue, I share your passion for questioning the pipeline. What are we doing to create that next generation in the workforce? I don't have any answers. I'm hoping to glean some insights from this panel today, but I think these are all questions we definitely need to be having in this discussion.
Absolutely. And that's a big reason why for just bringing this visibility and this representation to have this conversation is we might not have all the answers, right? But we at least are bringing it to the table and having the discussion, which is an important first step. So Maggie, kind of going to you, you have an interesting kind of insight into this because you're in actual curriculum and you teach people how to talk about AI. So what have you seen kind of in your industry around the women in these executive leadership roles?
Yeah, so, I work pretty much daily with leaders from different companies all over the world, really, and their teams that are trying to upskill themselves. I think that we're actually in a really unique time because there really isn't a good direction from anybody on what is the right step with AI. A lot of these other areas are a little bit more defined, right? You've had risk management going on for years. You've had some cyber stuff, but data has really been largely untouched. I used to work in banking and we had a chief data officer. It was not always people didn't always respect the role, right? They didn't always respect what the goals were. And I think that's changing now because people are seeing AI and they're seeing this big buzzword and they want to make an impact, right? But they don't even know what to do. A lot of C-suites at companies have no idea what that really means and what it means to get there. And I think it's a huge opportunity for women. I mean, anybody, but hopefully women or minority groups to really raise their hand and say I have this idea. Let me help drive this home for you. And a lot of that does start with the skill portion, right? Becoming AI literate, you don't need to be the technical mastermind in the room to really make an impact in this space. You have that AI literacy, you understand what generative AI is, you understand some of the technical landscape, you can make a massive impact. And a lot of it starts by raising our hand, which even as a woman myself, I know that sometimes that's a challenge in itself for a lot of people, right? Is advocating for ourselves. A lot of people don't do that well. I know I've had to learn that the hard way throughout my own career. But I think that's the opportunity. That's the door. We have the door cracked right now. And I think a lot of people can swing that wide open if they kind of choose to.
Absolutely. And that's really a perfect segue into, okay, our first conversation was we see this opportunity. We're not really sure kind of what it looks like or what it looks like for our future generation, which is most important. But moving on to what are the tactical skills in which we can give to our communities or other women in the workplace to actually be that AI literate, like you mentioned, Maggie. So I'm going to do a quick round robin with you guys to say, maybe 1 to 2, maybe 3, if you want to squeeze it in, top skills that you would recommend people be doing, both men and women, to get more comfortable with AI in the workplace. And I'm actually going to start with you, Dr. Sue.
I think AI in the workplace, you can't do AI in the workplace without knowing data. So I would begin first with what are the basic data foundations? And what I mean by that is, do you understand data strategy, right? Do you understand data meta management, right? Do you understand data compliance and regulatory standards? From that, then, because we don't have any enforcements of AI standards today, that doesn't mean that there aren't any yet. There are. In the EU consortium, they have AI standards. If you are curious, you can go and self-educate. And you can look at what those AI standards are, which are different from data standards, by the way, and how those two mesh. The second thing is people talk about AI ethics and AI practices. These are different terminologies. You must get familiar with what AI ethics means, AI fair means, FAIR, AI practices are. And I think from there, then you talk about AI bias. People just throw these terminologies around, which is just beautiful. Right, I'm going to reduce bias through my models, and And then why should you even want AI in the first place? Where is it applicable? Why and when should you be using AI? What is the benefit, the pros and cons of using AI? Then get to the different types of AI, because AI is far beyond just machine learning, right? There's different types of AI. So understand the basics of what AI can and cannot do for you, and then get very familiar. And this doesn't require technical skills. And ultimately, the first thing that you should ask yourself is AI already invaded my space, my home, my life? And if the answer is yes, then you should ask yourself the second question: when did that happen? And how do I stop that? Can I stop it? Then you become very curious as a human being. And then you go, boy, I'm not in data, I'm not in AI, and yet I have this UFO somehow invading my privacy and I don't even know. And then your human brain starts to ask these questions. And there's this beauty called internet. And then you start Googling. And when your brain becomes curious and when you start asking yourself questions, guess what? You're educating yourself about data and you're educating yourself about AI. So my thing is, don't wait for anybody to ask you anything. Just go and educate yourself, right? And that way, you then become a much more informed citizen of this world, which means you're already contributing to society. Doesn't matter where you live, right? To me, that's
Absolutely.
what I think is the beauty of AI.
But if you happen to live in Colorado, like we do, shameless shout out for Colorado,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
But absolutely. I mean, definitely not waiting and being able to utilize your resources. And that's the beauty of having that access in this generation to that kind of self-taught learning. And kind of going to you, Anne, because you are in the data world, I kind of want to dig into those skill sets that you kind of look for when you build your team around AI and data. What are some of those that you would recommend our listeners kind of look at?
Sure, I would say that piggybacking on what Dr. Sue just said, for me, it's really about that intellectual curiosity. The technology is moving really quickly right now, and change makes people nervous at times, but you really need to embrace it and understand. Being careful to not get into the AI hype, right? We hear about the AI hype, but machine learning isn't new, right? We've had autocorrect on our text messages for way too long. So these things have been around. So what we're really looking for is, are you in that curious mindset, right? We've already mentioned that some of the coding is becoming maybe easier to learn with the addition of that. But it's really that curiosity. It's really understanding how to leverage technology and really being clear as to what problem you're trying to solve. And I would also just make a plug here for folks trying to learn, and particularly in this case, we're talking about women and AI. There's a great organization that I've heard in other conferences called Women Defining AI, womendefiningai.com. They're really encouraging, right? Try it out. They have memberships, they have events, they have writings and all that. And it's really taking some of that mystery out of it. And again, using that curiosity. So for us, yes, in the database space, all that data side, but for me, it always comes down to who's intellectually curious and really trying these things out and digging further.
Most definitely. And thank you for that resource. That's always helpful to have, a group to be able to source information from. So, Nejo, I'm going to go to you next. And can you kind of talk to us about some of the human side, since that's kind of your wheelhouse, some of those human skill sets that AI has kind of brought into our technical world? Us engineers are like, what are soft skills, type of thing. So can you give us some skill sets on that side?
Yeah, and I think of AI as another team resource, right? So you're figuring out, how does this fit our process? Thinking about strategy, policies, and we've talked about a little bit about ethics. So I think roles in those areas are great places to start. I love the curiosity component of it, because a lot of these technical skills can be taught, but unless you have that curiosity of why does it work this way, what are we trying to accomplish, what does success look like, what a human would think. So those are really, I'm just focused more on the human part of the strategy and the policies. And Dr. Sue, you said, why are we even doing this in the first place? What's driving this in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And there needs to be a strategic KPI outcome result that we all are working towards as an alignment and understanding what is our AI, right? What is that definition for our organization? Really, really good point. Maggie, going to you, you're obviously working with a lot of leaders across the world to talk about AI within their organizations. What are some skill sets that you're seeing that you could kind of give us insight into across these organizations you work with?
Yeah, so I think the really big thing is actually each person or each individual needs to define like what is the career, the path that they see for themselves, because I think that that's the first step, right? Like in AI, you don't need to be, or in data, you don't need to be the technical person, but you can be the technical person. But a lot of times you're not going to be both. Like you can be, but I think that that's like more of that unique skill set. So you need to decide, like, are you going to be that technical person? And if you are, then you absolutely need to learn those fundamental skills of AI or of data in general. You need to start at the baseline of like, what is data, right? Can you code? Like what kind of coding language do you need to learn? And then piggyback that to like, what AI tools can you enhance that with? Which kind of prompting skills can you learn? You don't need to learn coding maybe the way you did need to do 5 years ago, but you still need to have that baseline. But then I also think about, there's a lot of roles that require like serious soft skills, right? Like, we talk about data-driven decision-making, but a lot of times that starts at like really strong communication skills. Can you ask super curious questions? I know that that's been mentioned a bit, but can you be really curious and ask good questions? Can you communicate well to like stakeholders or other individuals? I've been in the room with people who are incredibly technical, and I've had no idea what they're talking about because, the communication is sometimes lacking. I'm sure we've all been in the same exact space before. And so, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't talk to the other person or explain in layman's terms what you're talking about, then it's totally going to go over somebody's head. So really starting at that baseline and kind of determining what is the type of like career you want, and then building effectively towards that goal, it is going to be key. And then, obviously everybody already talked about really specific things within each of those areas.
Absolutely. And I love how you talk about kind of the meeting or the confluence, if you will, of AI and the business, right? There's this area in which that communication has never been a must-have until the last 10 years, right? Where technology is really the backbone of the organization now. It touches every single employee, executive, all types of things. So we need to make sure that we have that communication structure and you understand what that means. So Anna, I'd love to go to you, kind of building off of what Maggie said about looking at your career path. I know you do a lot of mentoring, which you mentioned in your last answer. What are some things that you're suggesting to your mentees, specifically women, to get more familiar and comfortable with AI?
One thing I always tell my mentees is to double down on what makes them unique, especially with AI in the picture, because AI can give you a generic answer on anything, be it marketing strategy or a sales script, or even generating content on, technical things like data science or machine learning or even code. But to go beyond that generic answers to build your expertise in an AI driven world is to have something that makes you uniquely you. So even though I sometimes rely on AI for marketing strategy, if I want to go one step beyond that, and if I want like an A player on my team, I will go seek out an expert. And to kind of piggyback on that idea, I'm also putting in a lot of effort within me, myself, my team, and also my mentees to foster human connections. Because as you know, the internet is filled with AI generated content, be it like videos or be it podcasts, be it articles. So I'm relying on the wisdom of my colleagues and my mentors and my mentees to get the right information sometimes, because oftentimes even like mediums like the some of the news sources I go to, it's very clear that it is AI generated. So to sum up, I think like to stand out in an AI driven world, we need to like double down on what makes us uniquely expert in our fields, and to like keep communicating that, and also to like rely on human connections to get the right expertise matched with the problem at hand.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. That human connection is so important in a world that's dominated by a lot of that AI driven content. And I'll just add my 2 cents in there that I always tell my executive coaching colleagues is make sure you're getting those data certs. You can do that while you're at university. You can do that while you're at any job. Getting those data certs are something that gives you that opportunity to have that foundational knowledge. And then I would say find someone that you want to be, whether it's Anne, Maggie, Dr. Sue, all of the wonderful people on this panel, and ask them for some time so that you can look at what they've been through in their career, because having that mentee mentorship is really critically important, especially when you might be a minority in your field, or you might not see a lot of people that look like you. So those are, my top 2 things that I always say to women in the workforce, especially kind of in software engineering or my industry. So kind of moving on to inclusion and equality. I know we've hit on this a little bit, but when we look at AI, one of the biggest things that we always say is, oh yeah, AI creates efficiencies, whether you're using it for procurement or HR, but we need to make sure that we're still looking at that inclusion and equality. So I want to kind of go around and talk about how we can create an area in which businesses can ensure that they're making room for the right candidate to a position, but also making sure that they're not having biases in AI. And that could be for, a hiring candidate, or it could be for other data within the organization. So kind of opening it up here, we'll go to you first, Maggie, since you've been at the end a few times. We'll bring you to the front.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing is being intentional, right? Mm-hmm. There's been diversity and inclusion and equity programs for a very long time, but they're oftentimes just kind of a checkbox, right? Like, we need to have this, so let's just have it. And I think there has to be some big intention here, and the bias starts, right at the beginning. Like, I think that there has historically been a lot of men hired into roles, and not that there isn't women that are perfectly capable in those roles. But a lot of times there's a lot of male leadership, right? Like, there still is, and people like who are similar to them oftentimes, right? Like, it's just kind of the laws of nature. And so we have to really be intentional here with hiring. And that includes, internal hires or external hires. And, we've heard a lot of times with companies using AI as a way to filter candidates, right? And it has sometimes turned out poorly. They realize that there is a bias in the system. So like, beyond just being intentional, we have to be actually like looking into the systems that we're putting into place regularly. Having manual code checks, having manual, reviews of the outputs that are coming in. AI can absolutely help to create efficiencies in the organization. But at the same time, I think that there is a massive opportunity for AI to cause more issues than there currently are. And so there has to be a good balance that starts at the beginning.
Absolutely, that oversight. And so maybe we'll go to you, Anne, talking about kind of from a data perspective, that understanding of what that means and looking at biases from a data perspective. Can you kind of chime into that?
Sure. I think it's what Maggie has said. On any model that you're doing, you need to understand how it's being built and what those inputs are. So there's all kinds of bias, right? There's the confirmation bias, right? There's unconscious bias and what's happening there. So I think it's understanding what it's being used for, right? You talked about like diversity and inclusion, and Dr. Sue had said this early on. We have to be really careful because AI is pretty broad in what you're talking about, right? So is it are you using generative AI tools? Is it the AI that's already baked into all the SaaS tools that you're using as well? And what is that outcome? And giving it that rigor, right? And being really clear as to what are the skill sets that you need, and are you casting that wide net? But when it comes to the data, it's understanding that the bias is there. So if you think about the generative AI, and if I think about all the public data that's been scraped in, well, there's already bias in there. So how do you unwind that and think about that? And it's going to take some work and intention, as we've just heard as well, and really understanding the models that we have in place.
So true. Absolutely. That intention, just that awareness, right? Of that does exist. It's not an if, it absolutely does.
No, it does.
So
right.
we need to
there.
right. And then kind of Anna, going to you, looking at that from a standpoint of how can businesses, I know you help businesses implement and select their AI. How can they ensure that when they're implementing this in their organization, they're doing it in a way that they can know about these biases and have these regular health checks?
Yeah, I think that would be to go beyond intentions and have systems and frameworks and quantified indicators to sort of like measure and map any and all AI initiatives. And you don't have to build from scratch, because there are like standard frameworks like that of NIST that can be implemented organization-wide, and even for governments who are like looking to procure AI software or build AI software, there are these like standards that can be implemented. So I would say like really quantifying some of these the implications of AI can help us like confirm some of these biases as well, whether or not it exists. If it exists, like what's the extent to it, and what can be some of the measures you can take to like redact some of that. And borrowing from the world of ML ops, you can like extend that to LLM world in terms of observability, having that end-to-end observability of like all AI models or AI workflows that is in your business, having an audit trail. It is especially important moving from DevOps to MLOps to LLM ops to have that observability kind of like stacked as the foundation for any AI initiatives. I think that would be the basics, to really have those systems and frameworks in place.
Yeah, definitely a strategic and technical methodology to have that observability suite to make sure you have visibility into all of these different systems. I love using technology to look at those biases within the system. Neja, what about you on the cybersecurity side? I know you kind of have a different lens in which these biases could create open doors to cybersecurity risks, all kinds of different things. What's been your experience?
So when I'm thinking about the people part of this, and we talked a little bit about the diversity and inclusion, when we have conversations like this, when we have as leaders talk about how on our teams and solved complex problems and provide these examples, every time that we do that, I always get someone that calls me after or sends me a message and just says thank you, because that's a reminder why I'm building the teams in the way that I am. And I can provide examples, especially from a risk perspective, that if we all look the same and we're all the same ages and all have the same background, that's exposing the organization to risk. And what we need to be doing with these biases is making sure, like we were talking about the frameworks and building a framework, and that we're not just building that and reviewing that once a year to check the box for an annual audit, but that we're deliberate and thoughtful about how we are building these teams. How are we lowering the risk for the organization by adding different roles from different backgrounds? So that's really the people part of AI that has a concern for me, because I don't think we've got a clear definition on the path that we're on.
Absolutely. That definitely, with just an industry left to regulate itself, that can be something that's very hard to standardize, right?
Wild West.
We do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Dr. Sue, any kind of concluding thoughts on this conversation around inclusion and equity in AI?
Yeah, I think I heard the word equality in that earlier. So I was like, okay, equality, different from equity. But if we are talking about equity, I mean, even without AI, that's always been an issue, because in most companies, there's diversity for sure, and inclusion to some extent, but equity seems to be still a thorny wicket, right? And many companies, I wouldn't say many, but some companies are not that open when it comes to equity in general. I'm generalizing like crazy now. Some have come a long way. That requires actually reframing your entire thought and going back and actually undoing and redoing and looking at your KPIs in a completely different way. And I say this with all humility, because I remember some years ago helping the chief diversity officer of a large MNC and giving her 22 different measures that they then applied and put it in their KPIs and their performance measures. And the first set that they applied it to was the C-level suite. And that takes chutzpah, that takes leadership to do that, right? So before you trickle it down to the next level of SVPs and VPs, you're holding your C-level people responsible on how you're actually going to measure diversity, inclusion, and equity, and how you recruit and retain employees, right? That's really going back and redrawing this board. So that's without AI. And I'm going to, before I get into the AI business of it, there are certain companies have actually invested and saw a return on investment after 5 years. And some of those companies, and I have no stake in any of these companies, are companies like FedEx, companies like Hilton, companies like Deloitte. Varied companies, different industries, and it's in the year 4, 5, it's year 6, 7 is when they get the return on investment. And that return is not only on productivity, but also on financial returns for the company. So that means universally enterprise-wide, they get it. But it's the first 4 years that there's no return on investment. And they've literally gone back to the drawing board and revamped their entire strategy and revamp their entire performance management systems and the KPIs. And that impacts the entire enterprise. So as I said, this is not easy.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot to unpack there. That's one of those that I call like a rewatcher, where I would rewatch that answer like 3 times because there was so much in there to kind of look at, which are so important to kind of, again, define, discover, and really understand. That's part of this new frontier, kind of optimizing our brain power per Dr. Sue's vibes over here. I think as we wrap up, something I'd love to hear from the group is just, what is your number one piece of advice for women that are trying to get to the executive level? What is one thing that you wish you would have done or that you recommend doing? And we can kind of leave this wonderful panel and discussion with some actionable insights for our audience to say, that's one thing that I'm going to take away from this. So I will start with, let's go with Najo, on you on the hot seat there.
Kyler, when you said find someone you want to be, I think that is a very valuable and solid piece of advice, and maybe not just one, but several. I love that. In addition to building your brand, the network piece is the most important. And that is leveraging your network, leveraging others' network. And I think in general, people want to help. So if it's done in a thoughtful manner, you were going to reach out to people and, take a few moments of their time. The other things that have supported me in my career have been being grateful for the great business leaders that I did have, and associating and spending as much time as I can with them. The constant learning, Dr. Sue, when you were talking about your reading, every time I see a leader that I admire and they share their insights in the books that they're reading, I've got that book on my list as well. So I think just always being curious and always learning and doing things that scare you and helping you grow. But I'll go back to that, finding the people that you want to be and what was their path. I love that.
So critical. Absolutely amazing insight. Thank you so much. What about you, Anna? What would you recommend as your number one piece of advice in concluding this conversation?
I think it would be adaptability to the new normal being AI, whether we like it or not, it's here. And I think I read this one post which said, even if we stop all funding to AI at this point, there is enough to propel it for the next 5 years. So one key piece of adaptability, especially in the AI world, I would say is rapid experimentation, and using the AI skill where it is most useful, which is, as Dr. Sue said, the velocity part of it, the scaling aspect of it. So use AI for those tasks and use the human creativity where it is needed. And I think it's going to be a combination of both that would help you get ahead in this AI world.
Very well said. Amazing advice. Thank you so much. Maggie, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, sure. So similarly to what Nejo said, I really do think the big thing is pick a space, pick a topic that you're interested in, and really dive in there. Being a specialist in area it's a great time to be a specialist right now. Being a generalist is good, but being a specialist really will help you. I think one big piece of advice that I got early on and definitely helped me is, be a great listener, right? Listen to the people that you're in the room with, listen to the people that you get to hear on podcasts, the people you're reading their books, whatever it may be, but listen to those people. I think one of the biggest things that helped me was just being in the room with people or being in meetings or being on webinars and hearing how other people talked and how they asked questions, how they answered questions. I think that kind of stuff, it doesn't even matter the space you're in. You could be in a technical role or a non-technical role, that will push you light years ahead.
Wonderful. That's excellent advice. Thank you so much, Maggie. Let's go to Dr. Sue.
Yeah, I would say I would take I'd say know the purpose of your life, It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter whether you're in data. Just know that, write that down. Know what your values are. Know what your intent is. It's got nothing to do with data, AI, nothing. And then align that to those purpose and values, to what your intent is and how you believe AI is going to help you. And just like open source, have a very open mind, just be curious. People have already said that. And listen. But as you're listening, jot down where you can self-propel and take actions. Don't wait for others to take actions, but don't put yourself at risk or anybody else at risk or your company at risk as well, right? So self-learn, self-motivate, all of that, but must always be aligned to what you are propelled by. Because when you are doing that, believe me, it's not going to be about you. It's not going to be about your project. You, your team, your company, and what your work will be, it'll shine. It'll shine in many different ways. Always fail. You must fail. If you don't fail, you will never learn. So please make sure that you fail a couple of times in life, and that'll teach you humility. So AI or no AI will help you, enable you to get there very quickly. But I think if you are aligned with purpose, with value, and with intent, AI is going to be that enabler that helps you get there. And you just have to be open. Just be open with your mind. Think about open sources. Use your LLMs, use your data connectors, use whatever. Those are just enablers. They're nothing more than that. And then use your fantastic human brain. Let no one stop you. And if someone is stopping you, stop yourself. Ask yourself why someone stopped you. Because I've gone through that. I continue to go through that. And then when I calm myself down, I say, why did I allow myself to go through that? No one else should have had that power over me. And I think this is what I'm trying to say, that when we stop and we ask ourselves why we believe that AI has that much power over us, which we shouldn't have, we shouldn't be afraid of it, is that they will actually know how we can use AI to our advantage. And I don't think we're there yet. I think this buzz about AI is a buzz, but to some people, it's much more than buzz. It's a fear, right? And so I'm going to go back, and I'm going to close it with this. If you go back to 60 Minutes, and if you go back and listen to John Hinton, who now lives in Canada, who began in the 1960s with AI, and he's let the genie out of the let AI out of the out, and he's wants the AI to go back. He actually regrets working on this. I'm not making this up. You just have to go back. It's about a year old. His interview is a year old, if not more than that. And he says, I don't know if let the monster out, but the genie's out of the lamp. I can't put the genie back. And you have to listen to what he is saying. There are plenty of people who've talked about AI, but I would say there are maybe 5 to 10% really in the world who really know the impact of what AI can and cannot do. So I always say, go make good use of it, but proceed with caution. Use it, but always question the veracity and the quality of information that is being provided before you start building it and use it blindly. It could be very detrimental to you as well.
Using that human brain as well to make sure you have those qualities.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Amen. All right, Anne, back to where we started. What would be your advice?
I would say, coupled with what folks have already said, the lovely ladies here, take advantage of opportunities. Create your own. But as opportunities are given to you, embrace them. They can be unsettling, but that's where growth comes from, is when you're challenged. So as I talk to others and just on my journey, I have been afforded a lot of opportunities that I've been able to take advantage of. And it's taken me places I didn't necessarily set out to arrive at, and here I am. So take advantage of opportunities. And right now is an amazing time for a ton of opportunities. So grasp them. Yeah.
Well said. Thank you so much, Anne. That's excellent advice. And I'll just share my own with all of this amazing insight that you've shared. But I think it's the power of asking. You mentioned and getting a little bit uncomfortable. Get comfortable with asking to be in the room. Can I sit in on this meeting? Can I ask you a few questions about how I can improve upon my role? Can I be part of this AI incubator, beta testing, anything like that? You are never going to know what is possible until you ask for the impossible. And getting comfortable with that, seeing it as an opportunity to kind of work that muscle. We mentioned failure a little bit, how to fail right? In order to move forward, fail forward, and get that next opportunity and take those learnings. That's only going to happen if you get out there and ask. So even if the answer is no, that's working that muscle to make sure that the next time you're still asking to be there. And that's probably what I would conclude with. But thank you all. This has been such an excellent conversation. And we'll welcome Jonathan back up to kind of close us out here.
Yes, thank you very much, Kyler, Ann, Anna, Maggie, Najo, and Sue. Appreciate your time over the last hour listening in on this conversation. Certainly enlightening as a guy. So definitely As my unique perspective has it, I think this is a conversation worth having, so I'm glad we're having it. As we wrap up the show here, though, I would like to invite each of you some quick self-promotion, 30 seconds or less. Where would you like to send the audience? We'll start in counterclockwise order. Dr. Sue, you're up first.
I think, I'm at that, I've mentioned this before. I think I'm at that phase in life where I want to give back to society and doing it my own way. But I just want to pick up on where Kyler left her comments. I think ask, but don't ask unless you have clarity about your intent and what it is that you want to do. Because without that, you're going to keep asking and you're going to keep making mistakes. And this is one thing that I think in my nearly 30 years of experience, I'm now recognizing that one of the things, perhaps, no matter how brilliant and how smart I thought I was, perhaps a little bit more clarity of thought would have helped, right? So and perhaps aligning that value and that purpose of what I wanted would have helped a little bit more.
Najo, where would you like to send the audience?
One thing that I was thinking of, and this is a lesson learned for me recently, is I thought I was a great listener, and I would challenge the audience on record your calls and actually see what percentage you're listening. And if you're listening somewhere around 20%, you're doing a great job. And, that's a valuable piece of advice. I always thought I was a listener. Maybe I've become more of a talker. I'm not sure, but challenge you to stretch that or let that listening muscle.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Over to you, Maggie. Anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, sure. If you're looking to learn data, if you're looking to learn AI, please come over to datacamp.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can just, look at the platform itself. But all of our courses, the first chapter is free. So you can come in and learn anything you want about data and AI, at least 25% of it roughly for free before making a decision. But if you really want to just talk data and AI, please, my inbox is always open and I'm happy to chat and help you, just talk to you about your career or really whatever you want to talk about.
Excellent. Love that invitation. Anna, where would you like to send the audience?
I would like to highlight two places. One is a community called Women and AI, which I've been part of for a long time. I've contributed, I have learned from it. There are experts in there are newbies in there, and we all support and foster a platform for learning and adopting AI. And secondly, the work that we do at Craft AI sort of complements that in helping executives and individuals get the right support for executing on AI projects end to end.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Anne.
I'll do a couple of plugs. Yeah, I'll do a couple of plugs I would say for those that are involved in building and working on AI, Percona.com, as I mentioned, we're an open source database company and it starts with data. So if you need your data to be performant and all of that and scaling, come to us. And then for this particular topic, I'd already mentioned that organization, Women Defining AI. And then also I have participated in some conferences put on by Data Connect. Amazing to go to conferences that are in data and data analytics. And on the stage is only women on there. So that's an interesting community as well for those that are interested in data and data analytics as well.
Thank you very much for being here. Kyler, last but not least.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can always reach out to me via kyler@theconfluential.com. You can also book time with me directly there to talk about career strategies or kind of what we do as far as technology. We have a mentorship program that is specifically for women in software or women in enterprise technology that's near and dear to my heart. So I welcome any interest in that. And thank you again for having me today.
Well, thank you, Kyler. Thank you, one and all, for your time and your perspective over the last hour. It's been a pleasure listening to it. And I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for listening and for watching. If you'd like to dive deeper into this topic and learn more about enterprise technology, we, of course, encourage you to head over to insidejam.com, join our conversation, and dive into all your technology needs and research. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for panel highlights, weekly podcasts, expert advice, and so much more. We will be back in just a few short minutes with our next expert keynote as John Santaferraro tells us how to spot an AI imposter. It is going to be a great discussion. You don't want to miss it. But for this group, thank you again. We hope you have a great day. Bye-bye. For video highlights, replays, and more, visit InsightJam.com.